eye on that. I'll keep an eye on that one, and as the questions come through, I'll stop them out. Yep.
That's okay.
Okay, perfect.
I've popped recording on, and I'm going to make you host, Helen.
Yep.
And there it is.
So I should see everybody trying to log on, shouldn't I?
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be anybody else in the waiting room just yet, but there's a couple of minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Last time it was like everyone came in late.
Yeah, I think time conversion is a little bit confusing with 60 countries to try and convert.
The time to look to that. Yeah. Today also the East Coast Wellspec podcast is coming out. The podcast from the Wellspec and East Coast about intermittent catheterization, which I did with Diane Newman.
Okay. Maybe now I can see. We'll just give them a few more minutes because it's only just hit the time.
Which time is it in Australia?
So for me, it's 9 o'clock. For Paris, it's 9:30.
9:30.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll have Tracy on tonight up in Queensland. She seems to be on leave, so may or may not log in.
Ja, das sind ja viel. Und die Cousina hat das heute gesagt, dass was sie gesagt hat, wahrscheinlich kannst du dann deine ganzen Mischungen für die Aromaöle alle über Eber bestellen.
Hello, I'm not sure who was talking then.
Was? Ja, das einmal und drehen wir dann, dass wir jetzt brauchen.
If you could turn your microphone off, please, if it's not directed at us.
You can, Helen, if you want. There's the little 3 buttons above. It's up to the right of screen, right of someone's name. So if you hover your mouse over, you'll see. Yeah, and then you can hit mute.
That one's muted now, and
it's like it's almost like being God.
There's one there I can't mute. That's okay. Wouldn't it be good if you could do that with people? If
Ja, weil ich es auch nicht da habe schon heute.
Should we just give them till 5 past, Veronica?
Yeah, that's okay, and then we start.
Otherwise, we'll have to repeat everything.
It would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see out from which countries the people are.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how we can, well, I guess once I've got the recording, we could go back and look at all the countries, or we could ask people, but shall we make a start then, Veronica?
Okay.
Okay. So thank you to everyone who's managed to join us so far. I will ask that you have yourself muted unless you're speaking, and please use that little hands up function if you do want to talk, so that we can let you speak without 3 or 4 people speaking at once. So our topic this week is bowel management with spinal cord injury. So this is the module that we worked on last week. And Veronica, who'll introduce herself in a minute, she will be kind of leading this one. We've got some good topics. We've had a really nice discussion on the Facebook Mooc this week about transanal irrigation, and we had a interesting question came through as well. So I'll hand over to you, Veronica. I'm trying to let somebody in.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for participating on this Zoom meeting. And today we have a look on the bowel management for spinal cord injured people. And I will tell something about me. I'm a nurse. I'm also a nurse scientist, and I'm working in the field of spinal cord injuries since 1987. And since 1999, I'm looking mainly to bowel problems by this group of people. And I am working in the Manfred Sauer Foundation. That's a foundation who have an advice center for nutrition and digestion. And for spinal cord injured people from Germany, also from Austria and Switzerland, could make a call phone with us, and they get some advice how to go further on with their bowel problems. And here I'm working since 15 years. So I have a lot of experience with bowel problems around the spinal cord injury field, and could tell you something about this today. And so there was a discussion this week on the transanal irrigation, and I think the discussion goes about when is the right point or when is the right time to start with transanal irrigation. And to have a look on that, I think, for my opinion, we have conservative bowel management for the people with spinal cord injury. And I think we have to try this in the first situation, because the conservative methods, if they went well, these are very good bowel management versions. And if the patient is happy with this, that he has finished his bowl emptying in half an hour, or maybe if you use digital evacuation, it's a quarter of an hour. It's a really good method to empty the bowl. And if this doesn't went well, I think the transanal irrigation could be an alternative. And the transanal irrigation means that catheter with a balloon goes into the rectum and will be blocked, and then you let water in the ideal cases, maybe 300 to 500 milliliter of water, and you wait a small moment, about 2 to 5 minutes, and then put the catheter out, and the stool or the water with the stool comes out. That's a good version for all people with a lower lesion, because the sphincter in this situation is relaxed, or is not really spastic, so that the people could be avoided or could prevent incontinence for the stool. And so I think this is a really good group which use the transanal irrigation every day, mainly every day, and then they have 24 hours calm with the bowel and haven't to think about incontinence. So that's one idea to how to use the transanal irrigation. And could you tell me in which situation you use the transanal irrigation? And if you want to say anything, please take the sign of the hand, and then you could open your microphone and tell us something.
Can't see any hands up yet.
Okay, if that isn't so, I ask you, Helen, how do you go on with the transanal irrigation in Australia?
I think it's a little bit different in each state. We haven't used it a lot in Adelaide during rehab. We've had a few people who've, I think there's been 2 that have used it while they've been in rehab and gone home. And at that point, they were both compensable patients, so it was funded quite easily. We start with other methods, so, you know, diet, digital stimulation, enemas, whatever, the basic kind of things, and would move on to that when those things aren't working. But interestingly, we've had a patient admitted for rehab who lives in South Australia but had an accident overseas in a European country and came to us using anal irrigation. And that was the first thing they went to. They hadn't tried anything else. That was the first step. And this patient is using it every day. So my thought was always the aim would be to get it down to maybe every second day. So when we're looking at the cost of that, it's a very expensive process to use it every single day. So we're looking at, in Australian dollars, for a month, just for the rectal catheters, we're looking at up near $700. And that's a lot over 12 months. And to then add on the cost of hydrophilic catheters as well. I did see in our chat that in Australia, in another state somewhere, they're finding that they might get either the irrigation, bowel irrigation fully funded, and then they might not get the hydrophilic catheters funded. This is through our NDIS, which is a National Disability Insurance Scheme. So I haven't had a lot of experience with it, but that little chat we had was quite interesting. And there were some countries that didn't know anything about it and had never used it at all. So, yeah, but I don't know. Is that similar to everyone else, where you would start with other methods of bowel management first and then sort of progress to something like transanal irrigation?
There's a Bibian.
Yeah, hey. Hi, I'm Viviane. I'm from Austria. I am working at the AUVA rehab center in Wien-Meidling, also in Vienna. And we don't often use, or we normally don't use the irrigation. We are, we have our patients take oral medication for stool management.
Do you
Mostly.
say anything about which oral medication?
Yeah, we have either tea, it's with Zenes. I don't know the English explanation. Do you know the English word for Zenes?
Zena is
Zenes,
international, I think so, yes.
Yeah, okay. It's Zenes, mostly Zenes products, yeah. Either the small, pills or tea, but yeah, mostly these kind of things, or
suppositories, yeah.
Yeah, genau, suppositories, yeah.
Okay. I think that's the same, for example, in Germany, that we used the first step after an accident or after the entrance of a spinal cord injury, we tried to get the patient for a first emptying, a bowel emptying. And if this happens, then we start with a conservative management. That means we try to get we get fibers and enough fluid intake. And then we take some medications with stimulative aspects. Maybe it's bisacodyl or it's Xenis products. And we try to stop that really fast and go over to medications which makes the stool softener, or which, for example, lactuloses, or also macrogol products to get a soft stool, because the soft stool is much more better transported through the digestive tract. And so we try to empty the bowel with suppositories, maybe a CO2 laxative, or also bisacodyl laxatives. And in the beginning, in the rehabilitation center, the people try to get a rhythm for the bowel, that it's maybe daily for the lower spinal cord injured people, and maybe every second day for the higher lesions. And then we start to go over to stop the stimulative laxatives and only try to get a good amount of fibers and fluid intake, and that happens well in the beginning of the rehabilitation. And if the patient is safe with these methods, he could go home with these methods. And if he go home in the home care or at home, he eats in another way. He has another daily rhythm, or his daily activity is changing from hospital to being at home. And then it may be that we have to adapt the process of the bowel management, that we have to look whether it goes on a good way, or whether to have to change little things that it goes good at home. So we started in Germany, for example, with the rehabilitation and the bowel emptying process. There's a question from Mimosa. Please, could you ask your question or give your comment?
Hi, I'm from
Hi.
Italy. I'm at work now, so I don't speak very well English. So we use a lot of transanal irrigation.
Mhm.
We start during the recovery.
Mhm.
So the first 2 months of recovery we do bisacolid, Movicol. I don't know how to tell in English. And
right.
we do,
Macrogol, yeah.
yes, macrogol, yes. And we
Yeah.
do the enemas every
Mhm.
2 days.
Okay.
If the people have more than 50 anni, it's over 14, sorry. We do some exams, colonoscopy. If the bowel it's okay, we start with the transanal irrigation.
Mhm.
In the young people, we start without the examination, and we do every 48 hours.
Mhm.
In the patient who can do by ourselves, they do. If not, is the caregiver. We give instruction to the caregiver to use transanal irrigation. We use Peristin, Ufora, or Navina.
Mhm.
So now it's a lot of change in bowel management. So we do with the transanal irrigation a lot of.
And how much? Mhm.
We don't discourage young people with enemas or with suppositories. We give them transanal irrigation.
And could you say how many people stay long time on this kind of emptying the bowl with the transanal irrigation?
The young people continues with this. We have people then 10 years using, I'm young, so I don't see, if they have the caregiver, they don't have difficulties with the transanal irrigation. Now, a lot of people that is old sheep come to us to take instruction with transanal irrigation, because the suppositories, we see that the suppositories or the enemas in the long time, they don't do well. They have the bowel, a bad management of bowel. I don't know with, I don't talk very well, sorry.
It's okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask you a question? I haven't
Yes.
got hand up button. My hand up buttons ran away, so I'll just put my hand up like that. How do you get that funded? Is that through your health system, or do you have insurance?
Our public is a public system, so the state found everything. We give instruction, one day yes, one day not. So they have 15 prompts.
Yep.
Yes, if they want to do every day, young people that work, that stay away from home, they do every single day. So they pay, they buy by himself.
Yep.
But we give every 6 months, we give a new kit of peristeen, because we use more peristeen. And they have 2 kits at the year, and 15 at month.
Okay. And do you have to apply for that to be funded, or is it just an automatic thing?
I don't understand. Can you repeat?
So for us in Australia, if we are sending someone home using, say, peristeen, we have, for people under 65, it's called National Disability Insurance Scheme, but we have to justify every single thing that we ask for in that.
Yes. So but the specialist justify everything.
Yep.
So with the bladder management, we give 6 catheter a day.
Yep.
And if they do only 5, we give 6.
Yep.
The 6 is justified by the amount of liquid they introduce.
Yeah.
So is with the bowel management.
I think this come out by the discussion on Facebook that the countries where the systems are paid, they use it more often than the
because they are patients that use not only peristeen, they use Cufora Minigo, so they took the rectum. So they with the Cufora Minigo they buy by own self, because I don't explain the use of Minigo. So we give the instructions, so they who can pay by himself use this, but others use only peristeen. Yes, it's a big thing that the state give the money. Pay for it. So the patient, the young people are very, very, very happy, because some people that in other hospitals, we change our our boss. So our boss is a mind open, and we change a lot of things in the 2 years. So we will see how we go.
And is there an age cap on that funding? So if someone, like for us, over 65s don't get any access to this disability insurance scheme, they just get my aged care, and for all of their continence needs for 12 months they get $740, and that's it.
They do everything we tell, so I don't know. We see the patient every 6 months.
Might have to move
So
on
if,
to have a good injury and get my funding.
I think in Germany it's also paid by the insurance, and if you need every day a catheter, it's also paid by the insurance. You have to argument for that, and then you get the money. But in the advice center, I have a negative aspects of the situation of the bowel problems, because only the patients who have problems calling to me or coming to me. And I see a lot of people, they used transanal irrigation and they stopped it because they are not very happy with that, or because they need 3-4 hours if they have completely until they have completely emptied the bowel. And so I think it's sometimes difficult to find out which is the right patient for the transanal irrigation. I think not every patient is the good one. If the patients have, for example, very spastic sphincters, and the sphincters goes not open, not in a good time, I think the transanal irrigation wouldn't be a good system, because the water doesn't come out. And so I think we have to check which is the good patients for the transanal irrigation.
Yes. No, yes.
So in the studies you see about transanal irrigation that there are about 30 to 50% of the patients stop transanal irrigation. They not take it over a long time. So I think it's interesting to also do some studies for spinal cord injured people to see how long they take this kind of bowel management.
We give a lot of importance of education, so we take time with the education of the patient. So the nurse who take the education see the patient 10 or 20 times. So we give a good education so the patient can use it correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question in particular at the moment about the transanal irrigation? No. Veronica, do you have in your country much instance of people with spinal cord injury having a colostomy because they're struggling to manage their bowels any other way?
I think this number of spinal cord injured people who get a colostomy is growing up. Because when I started in the spinal cord injury field, the people who get spinal cord injured people, the age was 27, the mean of the age. And if we now look to the mean of the age from the people who get spinal cord injured, it's about nearly 60 years old. That means much more persons in an age of 60 and older get spinal cord injured. And I think they have the problems that they get spinal cord injured as well as they got older. And also the older bowel has a lot of problems. And so I think that's one kind of that we get more colostomies. The other part is that we have people who are about 30, 40, 50 years in the wheelchair. And the bowel system get also older with the patient. And so we have more problems in this situation. And the people said they tried a lot of things, and the bowel management took a day, for example, or 8 hours, for example, or they don't get out of the house because the bowel management needs a lot of time, or they are not sure whether they are really finished the bowel emptying. And so I think we get more colostomies, and these are older paraplegic patients. These are tetraplegic patients, also younger ones, because sometimes they are able to care themselves for their colostomy. If they have a tetraplegia C5 to 6, for example, it may be that they could do them themselves, and they are not need some nurses or family doing the bowel program. And so I think I see that the group is growing up. And also we see that we have more patients who have elongated colon, that the bowel, the stool transportation goes not very well in the system, and they are always constipated, and it's difficult to come to solve this problem with the traditional methods. So that those people got they get a colon resection. They take out the part of the colon which is too long and put the colon ends together without any stoma. That's also a new kind of try to solving the problem first, because not all patients are very fine with the idea to have a bag with stool in the front of the body, and they couldn't imagine that. And then it could be a solution for them that we try to get a new form to the colon, or to shorten the colon, and then to try again with the bowel management to get a good bowel program.
We haven't had a lot of people who've gone on for a colostomy. The ones we have been, again, the older age group. But usually people with a real flaccid bowel, so they're on the toilet more than they're off it. They're incontinent. They can't go out. And everyone who's had it done has said afterwards it changed their life. It gave them back their life, because it meant they could get out and about again. So I think it's definitely got a use. And I think personally, if I needed somebody else to be doing my bowel care for me, and I was having problems with constipation, continence, skin breakdown, give me a stoma any day. Do it the day I hit emergency. Just get it over and done with.
I think that's a good idea for these patients. And I think also we have a lot of patients who get the colostomy because they have a big pressure sore at the around the area of the sphincter or of the backside, and if they get it that the rounds could healing, and they don't want to go back to give the colostomy away. So I think that's also, I think it was one study with over 100 patients, and they said 93% want to hold on her colostomy, because they see that it's much easier and not so time consuming. So that is one way. And since 2 years, we have one clinic who used the ACE stoma. That means that they could fluid with an integrate systematic. They get a small hole in the beginning of the colon, and then can fluid the colon with water in the way the stool also goes. And these, I think it's about 10 patients in the moment in Germany, and they also report very good results, that they are very happy with this system. That's a new idea, and I think a simple idea to have a good bowel program.
I think we've had maybe 2 people who've came into us who've had an ACE, and they've had it when they've been younger. And I can't remember for reasons, but it was done while they were younger, before their spinal cord injury. So they've had other problems, and that's when they've had it done. But they've been able to manage that themselves. I'll just read out a comment here from Maria. And I'm not sure if Maria is Mimosa, because this starts off with, "I'm very ashamed to speak in English." And if it's the same person, your English was beautiful, lovely accent. "In Spanish, some transanal irrigation is paid for by the public system, for example, Peristeen. In Maria's nursing home, there's only 1 young patient with Peristeen. The other patients have a intestinal protocol depending on the patient. As they've had the injury since young, normally they don't want the transanal irrigation." And that we see that with a lot of things. If someone's been doing something for a long time, they can be quite reluctant to change what they're doing. Notice that when hydrophilic catheters became much more popular and affordable, people who'd been using just an Ellerton and adding gel to it, a lot of them didn't want to change. They were so happy with what they were doing and they were comfortable with it. It's like having to tear those old catheters away from them and make them try something new.
Okay.
Mimosa, did you want to say something else, or have you just forgotten to put your hand down? If you just click on the little hand icon again, it should go away. I can't.
Forgotten.
Yeah, I'll see if I can turn it off for her. There we go. I'll lower it for her. I can't see anybody else has their hand up. Veronica, did you want to just read out that question that someone had posted on our contact page?
Per email, we got a question about how to handle patients with spinal cord injury if they have diarrhea. And I think diarrhea for spinal cord injured people is a terrible situation, because solving problems with incontinence in the wheelchair, it's an awful work. It's an awful work for the patient as well for the nurses who have to solve the problems. And I think if a patient has diarrhea, you always have to check, what is this? Is this a diarrhea that means 3 times a day or more than 3 times a day having stool? Or it's a problem of a bad emptying of the bowel, and then he has an overload from stool in the bowel, and then the stool comes out. And the other side is always to have a look if a patient has a fluid or a very thin stool consistency, whether there is a paradoxal diarrhea. That means that he has a constipation. The bowel, the new stool who comes over the constipations is the bacteria is working with the stools and get them very fine and very fluidly, and the fluidly stool comes around the constipation and comes out. And so you have to check if there's a diarrhea. Always you have to check whether the patient has enough stool the last few days. And then you have to check, if he has the diarrhea, whether there are some aspects of he has eaten something which was not good. For example, a fish which was bad, or things he doesn't, or he react with an allergic reaction on this. So that you have to check why the patients have diarrhea. And if you think there is no reason you could solve in another way, I think you could give the patients something which stops the diarrhea. It could be that you take an apple and you make small pieces of the apples on a waffle. I don't know exactly.
And grate it up. use a grater on. Make
You
little bits.
quite okay. And then you take this apple, because in this apple, the apple has a lot of pectin, and pectin takes the water off, so that the fluidly stool get over in a more consistency, or in a harder consistency. That could be one idea. The other idea, you can take pectin also as a pulver, and take this. And if the patient has the diarrhea more than one day, I think it's also okay to take some medications against diarrhea. But you have to be aware that the patient not go from the diarrhea into the complete constipation. So I think you have to be careful with giving some medications for diarrhea, that you have to look that the patients have the next or the 2 days after diarrhea a new bowel emptying, that he not fall over in a constipated situation.
We've certainly had some people that have been admitted from non-spinal settings. And they come in and they might be on 3 or 4 different oral bowel aperients, and they're just pooping everywhere. So the first thing we do then is just start cutting back on a lot of that stuff and see if it helps. But yeah, if we're concerned whether this is diarrhea because we're overstimulating, or is it overflow because they're constipated, we'll do an x-ray to see what's happening and then treat it. So if it's constipation with overflow, then we will use aperients, oral and rectal, to get them cleared out and get them back on track. If it's someone who's just quite flaccid and needs a firmer stool, we will make sure they're not taking any stool softeners, cut back on any stimulants as well, but then we might add some extra fibre. So one that we like using is called Benny fibre. We don't use too much Metamucil, because that will sit there and turn into this great big gluggy thick mess if it's mixed in with a drink. But the Benny fibre dissolved, you can put quite a big dose in and it will just dissolve, and if it's in water it just looks like water, tastes like water, so it's more palatable and people are more likely to take it. So we will kind of increase that until we can get a stool of a better consistency. But then it's also things like, have they got something like C. diff going on? And I think most spinal nurses can smell that down the corridor. So if you think you've got some kind of a bad...
What happens with the stool? That's correct. And I think also you have to look to the medications of the patients. If the patient has a new antibiotics, for example, that could be the result. And if patients took antibiotics, it would be helpful to give them from the first day, for example, a yogurt. Or some milky products like buttermilk or something like this, to save the stool bacteria, which are which good bacteria, that you could save them. And if you give antibiotics to take every day, a yogurt, for example, that could be helpful.
And that can help too if someone's on antibiotics. Women in particular, if you get them on your Colt or we have Inner Health Plus, one of those really good gut products, help with stopping thrush when women are on antibiotics as well. So if someone's got a UTI, you don't want them thrush.
I also took some if the patients have diarrhea, we also use sometimes prebiotics. There are some prebiotics you could use, especially if the patients have diarrhea, and it solved the problems also in a short time, so that you could take this maybe together with antibiotics, but also if you have diarrhea without any reason, you could take this to solve the problem.
We would rarely use anything like Lomotil, any of the real, if someone's got a stomach bug gastro thing and the doctor puts you on something to stop the pooping, we would rarely use those, because without knowing the cause, you could suddenly run into significant
basically.
constipation or a bowel
Yeah.
block. So it's just speaking up for the patient and making sure doctors who aren't specialised in spinal cord try to prescribe something like that, that they're used very carefully.
Okay, thank you. I think the problem of the diarrhea has to be solved for the patients very fast. That's sometimes a problem, and I think that at home it's sometimes really challenging situation for the patients as well as for the family.
I think there's been quite a few surveys of people with spinal cord injuries who said they can live without being able to use their legs, but it's the incontinence, fecal incontinence, that makes life unbearable. So it's so important to get that right. As
well, for the quality of life, it's a very high aspect to the bowel as well as the bladder continence is a high aspect of life of quality or quality of life. I've got a question at the audience. I have a lot of patients in my advice center which have bowel distension or abdominal distensions, and we tried a lot of things for them to solve the problems of the gas in the bowel, and we tried the things with the natural things like fenkel and anise and some etheric oils. We tried teas for that. We tried some creams for that to take over the stomach or over the whole belly, and nothing of these products as well. Also the simeticon or dimeticon medications helps really in I think my impression is that it always helps about 50% of the patients, and the other 50 patients have no effect of these medications or all of these natural products. Did you have any ideas what you could do if the patients have a lot of problems with this bowel, with this abdominal distensions? Or do you use special things in this situation?
We've got a very quiet audience tonight, Veronica.
That's right.
We've used charcoal tablets.
Okay.
I don't think I would ever take a big black charcoal tablet. They haven't been great. We have used flatus tubes at times. Haven't been able to get those easily for quite a while though.
I think in we have also the problem that when I started in the spinal cord injury nursing field, every patient have to learn to lay down on his stomach. Maybe in the beginning 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, and then a half of hour over lunchtime or after lunchtime. And we trained the patients for that. Today the patient situation says, oh no, I can't do that. I never used to do that. And the nurse said, okay, then it is like it is. And the patient never learned to lay down on his stomach. I think lay down on the stomach is very good for abdominal distension because you get pressure on the stomach side, and the sphincter is relaxed because he is not sitting on his sphincter and the sphincter is laying down. That would be a good situation to take over some how you call this if you lay down on the stomach, Helen, in the right words?
Lying prone.
Okay.
So if you're laying on your stomach, we call it lying prone.
Lying prone, okay.
I'm just picturing in my head a whole ward of people laying on their tummy after lunch, and you can see the sheets going with all the wind escaping.
But a lot of people
lunch.
never learned that, and if they call me, they are at home, so they never learned laying
Yeah.
down on the tummy, and that's a problem. I think that's a problem. And we also tried to get some shapewear, some clothes who take a little bit pressure on the body,
Yep.
the bowel can't go in a
Yep.
big way. That's also about 50% it helps, and the other 50% have no effect. So we have no real good solution to look for these patients who has problems with that. And I think especially the tetraplegic patients, because the gas also give pressure to the lungs, and then he has it's more difficult for a tetraplegic patient to get enough air in. So they are really have big problems with the bowel or the abdominal distensions.
We've used abdominal binders on occasion for that as well, so we for blood pressure, but to see if it helps with some of the gut stuff as well.
We also tried this, and the newer patients don't get this abdominal binders, but a lot of people have them from their first rehabilitation, and I asked them to try them again, and they said, oh yes, it's helpful, but also only 50%. So the other says, no, it's not enough, and no.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm guessing that our audience is finding us chatting away interesting, otherwise they would have disappeared by now. But we would love it if you wanted to make a comment or anything at all. Ask any questions and see if anybody can help problem solve. There we go. Evangeline. Hello.
Hello, I'm calling from London, United Kingdom. Just something about bowel management in spinal cord injury that's becoming a problem here is staff shortages, and the fact that a lot of spinal cord injured trained staff are leaving either because they're retiring or just leaving work. So this has an impact on how we carry out bowel management. Hence, earlier, I think it was mentioned that colostomy is becoming more popular. So that was the next course. So more and more people are having colostomies very early on in their injury. And that's been like welcomed by a lot of patients, but then, we need a study to compare whether that's beneficial at the very stages of surgery, because it's not an easy study to do, I think. But they do say that those who had colostomies, they think they don't regret having the colostomy. But I don't know if anywhere else in the world is having that issue of bowel shortages, especially in rehabilitation, where it's just doesn't seem to attract a lot of nursing people. The new nurses want, they don't jump to rehabilitation straight away, do they?
No.
Is it the same? Yeah, so it has an impact on our ability to provide bowel management. As for transanal irrigation, it is becoming a more popular way of using bowel management. But I think I heard earlier that it's a last resort for them, and it's the same here. It's not the first thing we do. So we do the traditional bowel assessment, the manual evacuation on the bed, and we try them on a shower commode. we teach them how to carry out the bowel management themselves. And if all those fail, we still have to have a doctor to say, yeah, teach him transanal irrigation. And yes, I agree. It doesn't work for everyone. It will work well on some people, but not for every people. And obviously, they also have to be sitting up well and not fainting when they use it. So it's tricky positioning.
Have a big poo and drop the blood pressure and pass out. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
And they
I
need
think
to stick with it and be consistent with it for weeks to try and get a good routine going. And I think some people just really early.
Yeah. So but so more and more people in the community though are wanting to learn it. Because like what I think somebody earlier mentioned, it can take hours and hours for bowel management. It can take, so in the UK, the district nursing team, the community nurses will come to the houses and do the bowel management. And sometimes they don't come early, they would come midday. So the patients will feel like, oh, they've lost their morning, just waiting. So then they turn around and say, well, let's learn transanal irrigation. With regards to funding.
But I think that's not solved the problem at all, because on the other side, in Germany, the insurance pay for the transanal irrigation. They come to the patient and say, you only could go twice a week to the toilet.
Right,
because you need so much time, and the time is much more expensive than the systems. So I sometimes write letters to the insurances that it's needs to the bowl has to be emptied every second day and not more, and that's not a problem. And in Germany, not all nurses in the home care field
that they can
are allowed to do the transanal irrigation. So the patients have no help at home if he doesn't do them himself. And that's a newer problems. And we also have a discussion in Germany. I have a Zoom next week, for example, where we want to discuss how to go further on with these problems. That the patient has no help at home, and how he could manage his bowel if he couldn't do his himself or herself.
Yeah,
that's new challenges, I think so.
Indeed. I think bowel management is still what affects the quality of life of patients who are not in hospital anymore, because it's multifactorial, isn't it? It's what they eat, what the nutrition, the everything.
It's not so easy
their
than
mood,
the bladder, I think so.
No.
It's something that's not talked about.
Yes.
And when you watch any of the TV shows and some poor person has a car accident, they can't walk, and then miraculously they can walk, but they never look at their bladder and their bowel function or the pressure.
Yeah.
It's not reality out there.
Exactly.
I think
true.
there needs to be a lot more research and studies and things to have the evidence to show important.
But there's a problem again if the staff is reduced, because we have no staff learning nursing and this, and I think the rehabilitation time is shortened. The people got out of the rehabilitation, the bowel management is not finished. I see much more people short time after the rehabilitation calling me. They have half a year of experience at home, and it was terrible for the family, and they are see a lot of problems, and they are very confused with the situation, and they call me to get some help. And I've heard that a lot of things not happening in the rehabilitation because they have no staff, the time is shortened, and there are new problems coming up for the future, I think so.
Absolutely, yes. So we share the same issues, Veronica, here in the United Kingdom, especially nursing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's everywhere.
The same. Yeah.
And I think at the
Yes.
moment, nurses, they can pretty much pick where you want to work. And we
Yeah,
relocate
absolutely.
service. And when we moved,
Yeah.
people who had worked with us for a long time, they then suddenly had this 30-minute drive to get to work instead of 5 minutes. So we lost probably 80% of our workforce and
Wow.
recruit. So people who'd worked there for 10, 15, 20
Mm.
years left. So we ended up with this pool of workers, very newly graduated nurses who have absolutely no understanding.
Yeah.
Bowel care is this foreign thing, and it's, you hear in lots of places, you want me to put my finger where? They don't know
Yes,
what
exactly.
they're
It's not
doing
a
or
very
why.
attractive thing to do.
Yeah.
It's necessary, but yeah,
Or
so
anus, and then that's it, and their bowel care's done
mm,
for incontinence. So yeah, that's why I think this whole Mooc thing, getting that out to all our newer workforce is really important, just to give that
yeah.
basic understanding.
Yeah. I think if well, I wish that with every like students learning midwifery or nursing, because I think the doctors do it, they just we preach that this is a medical procedure, really it's necessary.
Yep.
And then the stigma hopefully just disappears, because it just becomes part of normal conversation to
Yep.
do manual evacuation.
Yep.
The bowels, oh, it's still part of the body. We're just
And
giving it a
every
bit more attention.
every single person needs to look in the toilet.
Absolutely, yes.
Everyone, not just people with a problem, just look in the
Yeah,
toilet.
every single thing.
What's normal and what's not for yourself.
Yeah.
That should be on one of their bowel cancer advertisements.
I think we have to work on that topic, that we get prominent, more prominent. I've educated about 220 people, especially in a course, experts for neurogenic bowel dysfunction.
Yep.
And it's about 7 days. We learn them how to go with the problems for spinal cord injured people or multiple sclerosis or these patients. And I think from these 220 people, about 30% are away of the field. They're going to go to the industry. They're going to some companies. Not want to work in the night shift or want to work at the weekend. I think it's a big loss of knowledge every year.
Absolutely. And it's a loss because they're not being replaced.
No.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to
And
find somebody interested.
Couldn't be replaced in the same amount. And I think we have to look worldwide how we could solve these problems. I think that could also be a topic of a sick group. Or for the sick people to make some discussions about this, and which countries have good solutions how we could solve these problems. That would be interesting, I think. So we could take it on the agenda.
Don't you get this great sense of satisfaction though when you've had someone come in and their bowels are terrible, they're incontinent, they can't get up, they can't do any therapy, and you work at it and you work at it, and you make little changes and their bowels get sorted. And it's just wonderful when you've done that. Real sense of achievement over something that the people think nothing of, but it's such a difficult thing to get right. We'll often have therapists will say, oh, they missed physio because of their bowels. Well, their bowels are part of them and part of their spinal cord injury, and more important to get their bowels sorted than, if they miss a therapy session and it means their bowels are sorted, then so be it. I think we've gone beyond our time by 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was really interesting. Wonderful discussion. Well, it is recorded, so it will get put up on YouTube, and we'll send the link out with the email this week. We can still, if anyone's got any other questions, they can put them on the Contact Us page or on the Mooc Facebook page as well. I think I said earlier on, next week we'll be doing the Zoom meeting on sexuality, which is the topic the module we're doing this week. Next week is technically week 5. So we get the last module out, which is the pressure injury prevention one. We will stay with the Mooc open for another 2 weeks, just so everybody can catch up on things. And if people aren't catching up, if you let us know, we can stay a bit longer open as well. So we will have the sexuality Zoom next week, and the following week, which is technically week 6, we'll have our final Zoom meeting, which will be pressure injury prevention, and we'll also do a bit of a wrap up for general questions as well. So the time for those two will be 4:30 Adelaide time, where I am, or 4, I can't remember now, it'll be in the email tomorrow. So it'll be back afternoon for me. I don't know where the time is for everyone else. It's really difficult to do this at times that suit a lot of people. That's why we've managed to record them so people can catch up. But again, thank you all so much for participating. I think we're doing great work together. And thank you to Paris as well, if he's still there, for letting us steal his Zoom so that we could do this. And Paris he works at Hollister, and Hollister has been our sponsor for this whole program as well. So we couldn't have done it without funding all of the platform and the IT support for us. So we'll say good night, or good day, or good afternoon. It's just after 10 in the evening for me, so I'm gonna wash some dishes, pack my lunch, and go to bed.
Okay.
That's the plan. It probably won't happen that way, but that's the plan. All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.